Hello and welcome to Everyday Oral Surgery. This is your host, Dr. Grant Stucki. I am an oral and maxillofacial surgeon practicing in Denver, Colorado. The goal of this podcast is to connect, learn, and inspire. In this podcast, you'll be hearing from OMS surgeons all over the globe discussing ways to improve the practice of oral and maxillofacial surgery. Most information shared in this podcast will be based on personal experience and opinions, so please supplement what you learn here with approved research studies. Without further ado, please enjoy today's episode. All right, welcome everyone back to the podcast. This is your host, Grant Stucki. Today I'm with Dr. Vic Martel. He has been on our podcast many times. He's a general dentist who specializes in helping other docs do a lot of great things when it comes to building their practices. So Vic, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Grant. It's great to be back.
Yeah, this is awesome. We've addressed a number of kind of business/clinical topics, and we were kind of hoping to delve in a little bit today into kind of referral retention. Where would you start us off on that topic?
It's a great question, Grant. The things are changing. Well, you're an oral surgeon. It's getting really competitive out there. And the other side of it, dentists are doing more procedures themselves. And I think that, and I think today's an interesting topic because, you and I've had multiple episodes, and I think this kind of brings it all together, which is why I actually wrote this. And I actually have a handout. If any of your listeners at the end want to, get a copy of it, they can email me. But what it really is I don't know if very many surgeons out there, and you know this about me, Grant, but maybe some of your listeners don't. I spend a lot of time with oral surgeons because of traveling around the country doing my programs that I've been doing for 15 years. And with that, I get to have dinner with a lot of surgeons over time and talk to them about the good things, their pain points and things like that. And I think what I noticed mostly, and this is why I kind of wrote this handout and things, is that not enough of the surgeons out there that I speak to, at least, it's all I can say, are really have any systems in place to consider and really keep a hold of their referrals that they already have and how to retain them. And that's something that's super important. And the reason is, we'll talk about it in a few seconds, but losing one great referral can cost you a lot of money. And I think what we need to do, and what surgeons need to do, is create systems in their office, just like you have systems for surgery or whatever you happen to have, systems that are regularly done to help you retain your referrals. It's a big, everybody's looking for new referrals. I get it. But you can be out there so busy looking for new referrals that maybe you kind of forget about. I don't mean that in a negative way, but forget about the people, or maybe take it for granted that they're always going to refer to you. And that's just not the case anymore, and I think we have to be really more cognizant of how do I keep those people? Grant, you'd really appreciate this because I know you own restaurants. And what I'm going to say right now is the same in any business, but especially in restaurants. And I have an interesting book I'll ask you if you've read yet. It's all about restaurants. But, people will forget what you say. People will forget what you do. But nobody ever forgets how you made them feel. That's just reality, right? And in the restaurant business, that's super cool. My wife and I go to the same restaurant in Palm Beach every week. We're going tomorrow. And why? And we've been going there for years. Why? Because it makes me feel a certain way. I'm relaxed. I know everybody, and everything's consistent. The food's consistent. And that feeling you can't get very many places. And I think it's more important to do that with your referrals, especially, that we'll talk about. And that brings us into the pillars. But, in any type of business, because it's so important to make not only, and when I say people, I'm talking about the patients, but also the referral.
Mm-hmm.
You have to both. They're never going to forget how you made them feel, even if it's a bad thing. If you make them feel bad, they're going to remember that too. Okay?
Yeah.
So we have to be a lot more cognizant of that. And this is where this kind of stems from. How do we make our referrals and those patients that they send us feel consistently so that they keep on referring and they don't start referring to somebody down the street just because they happen to move in? And this is the whole premise of all this.
Yes. I mean, do you feel like that has evolved or changed over the last few years to become something that's more important, for referring docs? I mean, I guess the question is what has changed and why?
Yeah, I think it's because it's And Grant, you can tell me, I just think it's very competitive out there now. I think there's, you're in the Denver area. I'm in the West Palm Beach area. There's, we have lots of dentists, and even with dentists, they have lots of choices, right? They can send to oral surgeons down the street. They can send to somebody up the road. They can send to a periodontist to do an implant. And you're also competing against them, unfortunately, in some ways, that they can choose to do procedures that normally they would refer out. I'm a very different person. I only did in my practice what I felt I could do really well, and everything else got referred. That's just how I practice. I don't see that being that type of environment anymore. And so, like I said, you guys, the specialists, are you competing against other specialists, but you're also competing against the market and the GPs trying to keep everything in-house. And that makes it a lot more competitive.
That's a good point. So you've developed the 5 pillars of referral retention. Can you just talk us to us about that and kind of what pillar 1 is?
Yeah, let's unpack them one at a time. I think pillar 1 is, and it's cliche, but it's not cliche, because I'm going to go in a little bit of detail. You got to have outstanding patient experiences, period. And you and I talked about this already. I already expect you, as my referring surgeon, to be a great surgeon, to do really good work, to always have things under control. But there's more to it than that. You have to, that's the given. That's the price of admission before I would even send to you. That's just life, okay? But on the other hand, dentists want to feel that your referring dentist not only want that type of, feeling from a standpoint of trusting you, but they also want to look, you and I've had this conversation in different ways. They want to look good. And what does that mean? They want here's the bottom line. They're not sending you a patient. They're sending you their patient. It's a really big difference. And what that means is they expect you to at least make that patient feel comfortable, so that when they go back to the referring dentist, they say, wow, thank you for sending me to Dr. Stucki. It was fantastic there. Best experience I've ever had. Why? Because it makes the dentist look good. Because why? Because the patient's praising their judgment. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this too, Grant, and I used to get this, and I'll be honest with you, I never could tell whether it was a bunch of BS or not. The patient would come back, and they would say to me, wow, Dr. Stucki or whoever thinks you're a great dentist. And I, come on, it can't always be the same, but they make it a point to do that. Now, what does that do? Makes the dentist feel better, right? It's something that makes them click and builds a bond. But now, the patient services now are different. We're talking about, what are you doing? And these are things, this is part of what I mean by systems. I don't think they're, and you can tell me, after I say them, I don't think they're too tedious, but here's what I do know. They don't cost you much, because, we're out there trying to, and I get this all the time now, Grant, from oral surgeons. Well, should I direct to patient market? Should I do this and this? And, maybe, but it's expensive. So now what can we do that barely costs us anything but a little time? Right? Which is so much cheaper. Like, for example, and you probably do most of these, Grant, are you calling the patients that night? As the surgeon. Are you personally? This is me. I never appreciated, or never wanted my assistant to call the patient. I never wanted my front desk to call the patient. I wanted to have that 30-second connection with the patient, saying, how you doing? You have any questions for me? All those kinds of things. Now, let me give you a little rebuttal on that from maybe some surgeon or any dentist. I don't want those patients having my cell phone. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So here's what you do. You get another line on your cell phone, or get another cell phone that's only your practice cell phone, right? That's only for that type of thing. Because what I'm trying to also do when I talk about these pillars is eliminate the hurdles. It's kind of like, I don't want, that's an excuse. That's not a really good thing. So calling the patients, same day, that night, send your referring dentist a little detail of what happened. Hey, Mrs. Smith did great. Just wanted to let you know. Same day. These are little quick things that are so inexpensive. Are you doing a 48-hour follow-up to make sure the patient's not in any pain? Because, Grant, we all know that, they get pain that night, but about 48 hours later is when the pain hits its peak, and you don't know, or maybe we don't know. Well, that pain medication you gave me kind of made me nauseous, so I've stopped taking it, and now I'm, and they're suffering and want to call you or bother you. So that's a nice thing. Are you checking them post-op, which I'm sure you do. Post-op, you're doing a 1-week post-op. And then here's a couple little things that are just neat that take you a few seconds. And these you don't have to do yourself. Write a little handwritten note. Say, hey, Mrs. Smith, thanks for coming into our office. We really appreciate it. Dr. Martel was a great guy, and I really appreciate him sending you to. It's just, all these things fall into systems, you know what I mean? That if you do them and you do them regularly, they just become part of what you do. Just like when you write up your chart, it's just part of what you do. And then lastly, super important in pillar 1, you got to send summaries to your referrals saying, at the end of the case is completed, Mrs. Smith's ready to go, implant's integrated, or she's healed from her wisdom teeth, whatever that happens to be. So that when that patient walks into Dr. Martel's office and they say, oh, I had my implant done 2 months ago, and I look at him and go, oh, really? That's horrible. I want to know as much as you know so that I look like I'm on the ball. That's the whole part of that patient experience that, it's like I said, I keep on going to what you say. I was talking to my wife about this morning with that favorite restaurant the little things. Why do we go there? The lighting is perfect. The service is perfect. All the wait staff are friendly. It's all these little things. It's never one thing, right? And I'll be honest with you, it's an expensive restaurant. And we still go because of how it makes us feel. And all those little details. If the patient feels like that's the best experience they've ever had with an oral surgeon, and it's so different than any other oral surgeon, you're going to be a hero. And to the referral, being a hero is a big deal because you make them look like a hero, him or her, right? And that's what's so important about it. And I think it's something that we've kind of, in our busy lives, we kind of forget about sometimes. And it's so easy to forget when you're busy, but that's the reality of it. So here's the big one. Pillar 2, keeping personal communication with the referral. Here's my experience in the past, and it's changed over time because I keep on using the same people. But a lot of times, the GP or the referral never hears from the surgeon unless something happened. You know what I mean? You get the wisdom teeth, something. Oh well, this one snapped off, so then they get a call. It's never just boom. Let me just talk about this. Let me just tell you how it went. Even if it's a quick little phone call for them, that's part of communication. That's super important. That's clinical side, right? That works. But there's so many other things that you can communicate with. And this kind of leads into the last pillar, but it's so important and we talked about this at one of the sessions. Are you keeping either a CRM or an Excel spreadsheet on the little things about each of your referrals? And I don't mean all of them. Okay. I don't know, Grant, what do you think as far as the percentages for a oral surgeon, your A referrals? What percentage of those, of all referrals are A referrals?
20 to 30%. I don't know.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, and this is everybody's definition of A referral is different too, right?
Right.
And I think what needs to happen as part of a system is your office or whoever surgeon's office, you do an audit. Who are my A's and B's? We talk, Roger talks about A's and B's all the time, but knowing that's one thing, but then what are you doing with it? Right? Maybe once a month you have a little 45-minute meeting with your team members, and you notice that, oh, Dr. Martel was one of my A's. He sent us a lot of patients this month, and we did all these procedures. So take 45 minutes, write a personal email to them. And sometimes it doesn't. And here's what you don't want to do with that personal email is connect that personal email with a direct referral, meaning, oh, thanks for sending me Mrs. Jones. Everybody does that. Okay. But it also seems like obligatory that way. I'm just saying, listen, hey, Vic, just wanted to let you know that we really appreciate you. It has nothing connected to a person or procedure, but much more about just checking up on you, just making sure everything's okay. Do you need anything from me? And you do that for maybe your A's and then do your B's. And then, you're going to have to pay attention to the other ones too. And maybe those require a little work. But sometimes, like, what Roger was saying is sometimes we spend so much time worrying about our C's that you kind of take the B's and the A's a little bit for granted, not in a bad sense, but in a sense of communication. I don't think, and we and I talked about this, and this is where Roger and I disagree a little bit. I don't think they need a lot of FaceTime. I think they need quite a bit of couple little texts every now and then, with a handwritten note every now and then, something like that. That's a little bit more of a personal touch. We're so tech savvy now. Everything is, text is good and all this kind of. Let me tell you something. What that does for me is it gives me this opportunity to be different. And nobody writes a handwritten note anymore. You know how different that would seem? It would be like, and it does, like I said, Grant, it doesn't even have to be you writing it. Right. It could be like one of your front desk and you sign it or whatever. Something like that. Hey, something like this. Hey, thanks for being a great partner in our practices together. It has nothing to do with any patient. It has to do with just keeping contact with them. And, even sometimes with that, if you're sending a little card, stick a little, you found a little literature article that they might be interested in on, wisdom teeth or something like that. Stick it in an envelope and send it to them. Hey, I thought you might enjoy this. Those are all systems that, like I said, you don't have to do, but you need to make sure they get done, right? And then lastly, I've already talked about this quite a bit at length in another podcast, but keeping that spreadsheet at the level where you do know their birthdays and their anniversaries and their kids' graduations and things like that. And always connect with them at those times. I told you this, I don't know, about a year ago, and I still do it to this day. If it's Christmas time, if it's, Easter, whatever it happens to be, everybody that's in my phone that I've worked with, they get a quick little text. Merry Christmas. I hope you and your family are well. No agenda, no asking for anything. Just thought I'd let you know. And I talked about this too. It's not a group text. It takes me a long time. It takes me a couple hours, and I'm just one at a time. Right. And sometimes it's people that I haven't seen in a year or two. But for example, I just did one this morning. And it was a friend of mine. He's a periodontist up in Boston and in Connecticut. Well, his daughter just graduated dental school and now she's going into Harvard perio. What did I do? I get on and say, hey, Greg, congratulations. You must be very proud of your daughter. Looking forward to the future with her. That's it. No planned agenda, no nothing. What it is just keeping connection with people. And I think we kind of lose that sometimes with everybody in our busy lives because everybody's so tech savvy nowadays. But it goes to the pillar 3, which is complete opposite of that. You have to have some FaceTime, and it's, we've talked about this before, but it's so important, especially with some of your A's, some of your B's, and the frequency is completely up to you, but nothing can replace a lunch. I have some surgeons that were really, really clever. And what they would do is, because they had done audits and they knew let's say they know who their top 20 referrals are on any given year. Well, Grant sets up a reservation. You take the top 20 and their wives out to dinner. By the way, no business talk, just have a great time. Thank you. In other words, it's not connected to anything obligatory. It's just a matter of appreciation and learning that the FaceTime is so much more important in building relationships than, I'm doing this because, right? And I wouldn't even get up and make a little toast like, oh, thank you guys are my best referrals. I wouldn't even talk about that. I would just say, I really appreciate you. We appreciate our relationships, and you leave it there. Nothing more, nothing less, and never expect anything from it, but gratitude. And that's when the connection builds at the level where it's something, and we talked about this all the time. How'd you make them feel? Are they going to remember that? Because memory is what brings back relationship. Memory is what brings back feelings. And I think we don't do that enough. I think a lot of surgeons, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, is a lot of surgeons kind of want to, hit everybody at once. So they'll have a big dinner for all the referrals, right? It's fine. But how are you going to make those really good referrals feel a little special? Because everybody likes to feel special. Everybody that walks into your restaurants, Grant, want to feel special, right? If they don't feel special, they're not coming back, right? You could have mediocre food, but if you have great service, they keep on coming. And that's the same thing with us. You don't have to be the top oral surgeon in the United States to get business. In fact, let me tell you a little story about that. I'm in one of the southern states. I won't say it because somebody might remember. And I'm having dinner with a surgeon. And during the entire dinner, Grant, he is complaining about all his referrals. Oh, this one doesn't do this. This guy's not loyal. This guy doesn't do this. And I said, do me a favor. Can I ask you a question before you continue? And he said, sure. And I go, why should dentists send to you? And here's what he says: because I'm the best in town. And I said to him, that's not good enough. Things are changing. He didn't say because I treat their patients incredibly. I make them feel like they're appreciated. It was about him because I'm the guy, right? And ultimately, he ended up retiring, but it wasn't never at a point where he was thriving, right? And it speaks to attitude, it speaks to appreciation, it speaks to a lot of things. But it's a difficult situation because you guys are at the, and I keep on saying this in a lot of the episodes, oral surgeons are at the top of the food chain in dentistry. They're the ones with the most education and sometimes not you at all, Grant, but sometimes that comes with some fairly large egos. And at that level where, it's almost like they should send to me because I deserve it, because I've done all this. And we forget that we're all just human. And ultimately, we're going to gravitate towards people that make us feel a certain way, just like with restaurants and things. So that's the gist of pillar 3. And then, of course, we all know this because we've been talking about this ad nauseum for a long time, you and I. Education is the pillar 4. You have to educate your referral bases, right? And here's the challenge there is, what are we educating them there? We've talked about this, and I speak to surgeons all the time. Well, we have a study club. Okay. What are you doing in the study club? Well, we kind of have dinner and have some drinks and we talk a little bit and we show one case and we're done. Okay. That's nice. But is it good? If I literally boiled it down to what is your ROI on that study club? I guarantee you, number one, they either don't know, or number two, if they really knew, it would probably be at a loss. And the reason is, how are you contributing to their education to increase their bottom line, right? How do we help them grow their practices? And I know we talked about it a few episodes ago, but that's the kind of education you want to deal with your dentist. You want to do things that they understand that you're just helping them grow their practices, and like we talked about in a few episodes ago, should you do the, I just went blank, the education for, if they have a heart attack and they're driving your patients, or ACLS, or, basic life support, or all these kinds of things. They're good. Do I need one on opioids? Great. But those are the side benefits. Those are things. I don't think the surgeons are responsible for doing those educations. I think it's a nice gift because they don't have to pursue it themselves. But I think those should be a given. And now, what am I doing? Am I teaching them how to restore an anterior implant? Am I teaching them, whatever it happens to be? Because that contributes to their production. And that's where things become significantly different. Do we want to, like I said, do you want to send them a literature article that might pertain to something they do that maybe it doesn't have to do with you, Grant? Maybe it's, I read this cool article on occlusion. Let me send it to them. Let me send them this or that. But it's helping them learn at a level where they start to increase their business. And in one sense, we talked about this a little bit before, it seems like they start to need that from you. And if you become, and I tell this to surgeons all over the country, if you become the source of education at a level where they're growing their practices, they tend to forget about the other guys pretty quickly. I know what I was going to ask you, Grant. Grant, have you read the book
Unreasonable Hospitality?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Love it. Such a great book.
It's, when I first got it, it was so restaurant heavy. I'm thinking, what does that have to do with me? But then you really listen to it. All they're doing is, how do you treat human beings? Right. Yeah. And by the way, did you ever get the second book from Beyond Giftology?
No, I didn't read that one. Is that good?
It's way better than Giftology.
Really?
Because it talks about the psychology of gifting more than anything else. It's so good. I have all these tabs on the book in my office. It's like I can't stop reading it. It's just unbelievable. So, which, by the way, goes to our last our final pillar, which is, how are you appreciating these guys? How are you appreciating your referral bases? What are we doing that's different? And we can go through this because I'm sure some of your listeners didn't listen to all the other ones we've done together. But, like I said, you want to do the Christmas baskets and the Easter basket? Okay, great. That's what everybody does. What are you doing differently? Are you making the gifts and appreciation personal? Are you sending me a bottle of my favorite tequila? I don't drink tequila, but tequila. Are you giving me a round of golf at my favorite golf course? Are you, the kinds of things that are so different than anybody else. And then connected to that, which, you talked about this and I did too, is don't do those things when everybody else is doing it, maybe do it with
Yes.
their birthday. And that's where that Excel spreadsheet comes in again, or the CRM comes in. Know their birthdays, know their anniversaries, know the graduations of their kids, and do those things then, because the beauty of that is nobody else is doing it. They literally are not paying attention. And I don't know if they're not paying attention because they don't have systems in place or it sounds too tedious. I don't know, Grant, what are your thoughts on, what I'm talking about, does it sound like a heavy lift for people when you're in a busy oral surgery practice?
You mean all these pillars or just the gifts?
Yeah. And I'm going to say, I'll be the first one to tell you, you're not going to do them all at once, right? Because but if
Yeah.
you take pillar one, and they don't even have to be in order, pillar one, pillar two, pillar three, and say, okay, for this next quarter, we're gonna really concentrate on pillar two or concentrate on pillar three, and then get that, because it takes about 90 days for us to get into a habit of doing something, right? So ultimately that, and then I think eventually the systems will become so easy that you'll implement them all over time, and maybe that's going to take you a year, a little over a year, but I think it's something that can happen. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. What do you think about what it takes to
No,
do this?
yeah, I don't think it's a heavy lift. I think what you're saying, most of these things are pretty small, simple nuances that it's kind of like you just add along the way. I mean, it's like, for example, pillar one, I personally do want my patients to have my cell number, and I give it out. I have a Google Voice number that connects to my cell. So when they call, it shows up as Google Voice. I know it's a patient, but I want the patient, contacting me directly. I don't want some middleman that maybe not saying the right things. I can put the fire out the quickest, the best. So why not just come straight to me and let's figure this
That's
out?
exactly what I did for a long time. I didn't mind if anybody had my cell phone number. And to be honest with you, over the years I've been doing that. Nobody really took advantage of it. Nobody really abused it. And there's another thing that this I'm talking about your referrals now, and this makes this one pillar a little easier. There's a way on your iPhones, and I only have iPhones, so I don't know if there's anything else, where within your contacts you can make contact lists. You can add a list to your contacts, and what I would suggest is just have a contact list referrals. And under that list, it's all your referrals, right? So you don't have to go scrolling through your iPhone. And what that helps is, let's say in that, because you have their contacts and after you know their birthday and you know these things. Or sometimes, and I do this with surgeons, and the rule of thumb for me is if somebody comes to my mind, like for no reason, random, like I have a friend in, Tampa, a surgeon, I literally will get on my phone and say, hey, just checking in, seeing how you're doing. I don't say anything else, but what it does is it keeps that connection live, like the wires are still connected, right? And I think with surgeons, if they have on their iPhones, just have an iPhone list. And then in the evening, if you're sitting at home relaxing, just scroll through. And if one name hits you, like, oh, I haven't talked to Vic in a while. Hey, Vic, just checking in. How you doing? Those things are worth, like I said at the very beginning, losing one good referral is very expensive. And, losing a good referral could be high six figures in some instances. I think I told you my buddy that I referred endo to that sent me the peanuts. You remember that story? But in any event, I literally would keep track. I probably send him by myself a couple $100,000 a year. Wow. So think about that. Now he's probably sad because I'm retired, right?
Right.
But if I would have lost that, if he would have lost that referral, probably would have taken him about 2-3 months, but he would have gone, holy smokes, I haven't seen any cases from Vic in a while, right? Guess what? Sometimes by then it's too late. So scrolling, having an iPhone list of just your referrals, and you can even put them in, I don't even know if you can do this on an iPhone. You can put them in order. I think it's just automatically going to be an alphabetical order, which is fine because mentally But I was going to say you could keep, your A's and then your B's and then your C's, or you can actually create A lists, B lists, C lists on your phones at the level where it's all of a sudden you just keep on going through it and you just touch base with them, or happy anniversary, hey, congratulations on this. I heard you just had a daughter. That's a great, you're at that age where, and I know you have 6 kids, but you're at that age where you're still people are having kids. And it says something. You know how valuable it would be if you found out one of your referrals just had a baby girl and you sent them a gift?
It'd be huge.
Yeah, and nobody does. The beauty of these things is not only are they nice gestures and they're kind, but nobody else does it.
That's right.
And that's where things stand out. And that's why restaurants become great. They do things that nobody else does. So
Yeah.
those are the pillars in and of themselves. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
A couple comments. Pillar two, I feel like, so I talked about this on an episode, but I also do handwritten notes and text. I think when you're doing those things, a handwritten note or a text or a message, I think I've learned to be very specific with, like, I try to do two specific things about what I appreciate about that person.
That's great.
Like, not generic stuff like, hey doc, I really like the other day I noticed how good you are with calming patients down in a frustrated situation. That's just such a skill. You're awesome at doing that. When you're super specific there, and people can tell, hey, this guy appreciates and pays attention to who I am, and it's just more special than like, hey, you're awesome, thanks for being that you could have basically copied and pasted and sent to everyone in your contact.
It's so funny you said that, because I'll give you an example, and I know you know this one. You get on your Facebook page or your Facebook, and you notice, oh, it's this person's birthday. It tells you all the birthdays and things like that on Facebook. I never say happy birthday on Facebook if it's somebody I know. I text them. Because everybody does the other. So I get on my phone, I say, hey, and here's the cool thing about, I don't know about, do you have an iPhone? Do you have something else?
iPhone, yeah.
Okay. So here's the cool thing about an iPhone. If I text Grant Stucki happy birthday, from that point on, it's in my calendar after the first text. So now every year, if I see today, it'll be up in that upper right-hand corner of my calendar. It says, oh, it's Grant Stucki's birthday today. So now
that's
from
cool.
that point on, I can keep on doing it. So all it takes is that first time. But I think you're right. I think being incredibly specific, because what you don't want to look like is generic, right? It's kind of like, right. It doesn't, I hear you, whatever. I heard you did a great job on, you always do great veneers, Vic. And, it's amazing. Every time I see one of your patients, their smiles are gorgeous. That's nice, right?
Yes.
Because it makes them feel like they're a good dentist, and everybody wants to feel like they're a good dentist. And you know what else? They want to really appreciate that you noticed, right?
For sure.
And you throw in at the same time, I noticed the beautiful smile you gave Miss, and I told her that I thought it was fantastic. Wow, that's so powerful, right? It's so totally. They're loving you, and it's just being different than everybody else. And I keep on going back to this, Grant. People come to your restaurants because they enjoy it, and maybe it's because they're different than the restaurant that's right across the street, right? I mean, my wife and I, when we go to dinner tomorrow, I'm not exaggerating, I will probably pass 40 restaurants on the way there. Wow. Palm Beach is just all restaurants. Now, here's the difference. Are they all expensive? Yes. Are they all have good food? Yes. Are they all beautiful on the inside? Yes. This one makes me feel a certain way. Yeah. Now, it's one of these things. I'll tell you a funny story, because it just happened last week. We sit down at the restaurant, because we go every Sunday just to like a date night kind of thing. And as soon as we sit down, both of us look at each other and go, just relax.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can let everything go. The lighting's perfect. Everything's, the service is spot on. And I just, the other day somebody's complaining about my restaurant. That's how personal I take it. And I said to them, I don't understand. I've never had a bad experience there. It's everything's very consistent. It almost makes them stand up for you, right? So if somebody ever said anything about Grant Stucki to one of your referrals, and they love Grant Stucki, if they have any kind of a feelings, they're going to say something. They just are. So Grant would never do that. There's no way. So that kind of squashes that, because how bad comments get, right? They spread like wildfire, and good ones people barely remember. But I just think that we need to kind of roll it up into something, summarize it. I think the most important thing we can get out of this today is, if we can create systems in your practice that can help you with these pillars, which I don't think there's anything that I said from the pillar standpoint that doesn't make any sense, right? They're all just, for most of us, just common sense things. Sure. I think if we can maybe once every 3 months add another pillar, I think by the time you're done, you're going to notice a big difference in consistency in your referral base. And I think that's important. Mm-hmm. That's why, like I said, Grant, and you have my email and everything. If they want to, at the end of this, if they want to, in your notes, show notes, if they want to send me an email, just say handout. All of the things we talked about today are kind of like systematically printed out. and they can have
Nice.
a copy of it on a PDF. And then you can do them at your own pace. I think that's the best way to handle these kinds of things, because I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but they all are very important, each and every one in a different way.
Love it. This is great content, great kind of step-by-step pattern to show surgeons, anyone who's got people referring to them, to know how to really enhance that experience that a referring doctor has. I love your comment from your story of being able to go to that restaurant and just you can relax, right? Because you have a trust there, that you're going to be taken care of as soon as you're in that restaurant.
Right.
We want to create that same experience for our referring docs, that they can relax when they send the patient over, and then also for the patient, right? When they sit down in your chair, they're like, I know Dr. Stucki is going to give me the best service here.
I think that I'm sure you read that book, The Ritz-Carlton Effect, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and I was just listening to somebody evaluate the book the other day again, and because it never gets old. It's the same thing, right? It's the same old story that always works. But it's why would people pay $1,000 a night to sleep in a bed as opposed to $160 a night to sleep in a bed? And it's because they know that they have in their mind an expectation of how they're going to feel when they walk in. Front desk is going to treat them a certain way. The doorman's going to open the door. Everything's going to be spot on, and it's consistently the same quality. Not everybody's going to pay for that, but there's going to be people that are, and it's just because of the same thing we've just said at the very beginning. How did you make them feel? You don't walk into a Ritz and go, oh, the lobby's beautiful. You go in there and go, oh, that place, I just feel like so relaxed when I'm there. And that's way, hopefully, when I send, here's what I did. Here's the reason maybe I became so loyal to my referrals. If I was using Dr. Stucki, the minute I sent the referral, I didn't think about it anymore. I knew they were going to be taken care of. There was no, God, I hope this is, even something, and maybe the only thing I would ever have from a communication standpoint is I might have called you ahead of time and say, Grant, this is kind of a difficult patient. I just want to warn you. That would be the only thing I would do. Other than that, I just knew that everything was going to be fine, and they were going to be happy with the experience. And once you get there, why would I refer anywhere else? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's why this multiple referral thing that we talked about shows ago is just silly to me. It doesn't make any sense. I know Grant's going to do this. I know this guy's going to do this for me. And I'm just going to keep on doing the same thing I've always done. Hopefully that helps your listeners, because I think that you have a lot of younger dentists, younger surgeons that are, coming out and going into practices and with mentors and things. In fact, I'm going to be at an oral surgery meeting in Dallas in a few months, that just a closed door meeting. And this is what we're going to talk about, because the residents have how much did you know about customer service when you got out of residency, Grant? It just didn't happen. So yeah. I think we're going to review that with them. And, some of it may hit the spot. Some of it may be too premature, but at least they can say they didn't hear it. So.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic too, of just like what happens in residency. Even if you go into residency with some background in customer service, it's just blown to bits because of the way you're expected to work, and the way you're treated in residency is just you're expected to work 90 hours and see 1 million patients every day, and it's just literally runs you ragged, and like all skills of customer service usually kind of get blown out the window.
Well, and also you're given patients. You don't have to seek patients. You don't have to seek relationships, right? They kind of walk in the door, and you're going to do whatever they tell you to do. Where now all of a sudden you're in the real world, where you have to not only treat a patient a certain way, you have to kind of find relationships to send you patients. It's such a different way of doing business, but both are important. You learn your skills there, your hard skills in surgery, right? And you learn the soft skills once you get out.
Well, good. I'll put your contact info in the show notes. I really appreciate you being willing to field questions or provide the outline documents to our listeners. And it's just nice of you to share this info and spend time, because it takes a lot of work to put stuff like this together. So thank you, Vic.
All right, buddy. It's a pleasure seeing you again.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Oral Surgery. For more information on these podcasts, please visit everydayOralSurgery.com. I love feedback and would be very grateful if you would reach out to me via my email, grantstucki@gmail.com, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Or you can text me at 720-441-6059. Additionally, if you have any topics you'd like to hear about, or if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email or text me. I found many of my interviewees through people who have been contacting me and I've been listening, and I've gotten so many great ideas for more podcasts, and that's what helps keep the podcast rolling. So I really appreciate you making that extra effort and helping me out with feedback and knowing what to do next on the podcast. Thank you so much.